Thank you very much. Can you hear me in the back? Yep, you're good? All right. Um, so today, Colonel Davis asked me to provide you with an update about the ongoing operations in Mali. And then it's going to be the opportunity for me to speak about the main operation of the French army and the French forces in the world. So today we have every day permanently deployed in Mali and in the area, in that area, 3,500 soldiers. It's roughly an American BCT size element. And if you consider, and because you need to keep that into your mind, somewhere in your mind, every time you deal with a foreign military force, keep in mind that the ratio between the French population and the American population is roughly 1 to 5. And that ratio works for all human organizations. American FORSCOM is roughly about 305,000 soldiers. French FORSCOM equivalent is more than 70,000 soldiers, 1 to 5. Okay? So when I speak about an operation with 3,500 soldiers, it means for you, at the American scale, it's roughly an operation involving 17,000 soldiers. All right? Basically, 2 divisions. All right? Okay. Today's operations named Barkhane is a continuation of an operation started in 2013, January 2013. The name of that operation was SURVAL. It was a first entry operation, something not expected and not planned. But when you exert mission command, you don't need to come with a plan. So that's a good point, and so stick to your doctrine and keep that in mind as well. My aim is to develop your situational awareness on the 3 main levels of strategic, operational, and tactical level. Because all those 3 levels are mixed together and explain how we have been able to conduct that operation that way. And it's part of those factors of success for the operation. All right. A good brief starts always with a presentation of the area. And before that, as an introduction, I just want to show you why Africa has a special interest for the French. So this is Africa. Can you see the pointer? Yep. All right. So this is Africa, obviously. Mali is somewhere here. It's a landlocked country. We'll show you another map later. This is France. And this is Europe with Spain here, Portugal, Italy, Greece. That sea is our south border. This is our Rio Grande. When you come to the Gibraltar Strait here, there are just 3 kilometers from the Moroccan coast to the Spanish coast. 3 kilometers. You've got a few kilometers somewhere here between the coast of Libya and the first Italian island. You just need a few hours to come from Alger in Algeria, which is somewhere here, to the seaport of Marseille on the south coast of France. This is our south border. Everything that happens here, somewhere here, has consequences here in France and Europe. So it's not only So if we are interested in Africa, it's not only for historical reasons, because of the colonial era and our colonial empire, because the empire is done since 1962. All right, so this is history. This is the past. It's not only about economic ties we may have with Africa. It's not about the French population living in Africa. This is not about the African populations living in France. It's a strategic interest, because everything that happens somewhere here has consequences somewhere here. This is a map that has been shown in the Washington Times in 2014. It is a threat assessment. It is about what ISIS, or the Islamic State, could do in the future. This is a 5-year expansion plan. So this is what we think ISIS would like to do between 2014 and 2019, 2020. I don't know if it's going to happen. I don't know if it's true. I don't know if it's still relevant. But it's just to give you an idea. Look at that. This is France, Spain, Portugal, Italy. This is North Africa. Mali is somewhere here. ISIS, just on the other bank of the Rio Grande. This is our situation, okay? Everything that happens somewhere here has consequences here. So let's start by the beginning. Operation SURVAL. This is Mali. Mali is a landlocked state. No coast, no sea entrance, landlocked country. It's roughly twice as big as France is. 1,500 kilometers. Gao, Bamako. Bamako is the capital city. 1,000 kilometers. Twice as big as France is. Algeria in the north, Mauritania on the west, Senegal, Guinea, Burkina Faso, Ivory Coast, and Niger. It's a transition area. It's a transition between a desert, which is the Sahara Desert, which goes up to there. You've got the Niger River here. That river marks the end of the transition between the desert and the rest of the country. It's a transition between desert and savanna. It's a transition area between nomad populations and farmers. Two different ways of life. Two different ways of life. Nomads here, farmers here. It's a transition area between what the Africans call black Africa and white Africa. I spent 2 years in Senegal, and when talking with my Senegalese colleagues of the Senegalese armed forces, every time they were referring to people from Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, they were referring to those guys as white guys. This is a transition area between an Arabic Islam and another way of being a Muslim. And it's also a transition area between a fully Muslim area and a partially Christian area. Mali was, maybe is still, a failing state. Capital city here in Bamako control more or less that part of the country. From the western borders to the Niger River. And those two towns of Tombouctou and Gao are the bridges between the western part of the country, which is considered as a youthful part of the country, and the rest of the country, which is made mainly of desert. The government controls more or less that part of the country and is not really involved in that part of the country. And the north of Mali is a conflict area, because that part of the country is controlled by smugglers, is controlled by criminal groups, is controlled by armed groups more or less connected to jihadist groups. And you have no real difference between a smuggler, between a jihadist, or between whatever criminal networks you may find over there. The main opponent in the area is made of Tuareg tribes. Those Tuareg tribes belong to this movement, which is a so-called liberation movement. And they move alongside the south border of the Sahara Desert. They belong to what the Africans call the white Africans. And they use Tombouctou and Gao as connection areas with the rest of the country. And that group of Tuareg is basically at war against Bamako. And what happened in January 2013 is that that group, all together with other armed groups, and especially ACME, so Al-Qaeda, this is the name of Al-Qaeda in that part of the area, plus other jihadist movements like Ansardin and Mujahid, have broken through the defense on the Malian forces here on the Niger River and started an offensive to the south, to Diabali here and to Bamako. And in January 2013, the French president has decided to stop that offensive. And he has committed French forces already present in the area. That's a mission statement. It's quite interesting for different reasons. First, we have conducted Operation SURVAL upon request of the Malian government. It gives us legitimacy. We are here because the Malian authorities want us to be there. It's in accordance with different United Nations Security Council resolutions. It gives an additional legitimacy to our operation. That's the strategic layer of the operation. And then what you've got here is a mission statement. Assist the Malian forces, strike, secure, set the conditions. Set the conditions. That's the exit strategy. So we came, as I told you, it was not prepared, it was not planned, but we came with a plan anyway. And we came with a plan, a campaign plan. Started from the force buildup, ended to the exit, to the end of the operation. in a military affairs, you need to know how to start a war, but you need also to know how to end a war. That's the exit strategy. What you've got here, two terms, strike and secure. Secure Bamako, we know what it means. As soldiers, we know what it means. Strike terrorist facilities, we know what that means. I've been deployed twice in Kosovo. In Kosovo, we use non-military terms as a mission statement. We use the term of safe and secure environment, SAFE. And we used to add that term everywhere in our CONOPS, in our plans, etc., etc. Do you know what a safe and secure environment is? Can you check in your doctrine or in the NATO doctrine what a safe and secure environment is? No, because it doesn't exist. When you're said to strike the enemy, you know what it means. And that mission statement has been one of the factors of success of this operation, because it's clear, it's direct, it's understandable by a soldier. And it has been true at the strategic level here and at the operational level as well. And the operational level is right there. This is a concept of operation. A three-phase operation. Phase one, reconnaissance in force. Main effort, the terrain. The aim is to regain the terrain lost by the Malian forces. Phase two, consolidation phase. Main effort, the enemy. In that case, we strike the enemy. Phase three, stabilization. Main effort, supporting the partners, supporting those who are supposed to come after us, supporting the Malian forces to deal with the situation. And it has to be a quick operation. We need a very quick operational tempo. Why? We hear mid-January, 10 weeks later, we start. If we were in Southeast Asia, we would call that the monsoon season. So we've got 10 weeks to achieve that. Free Mali, destroy terrorist networks. And then to do that, three requirements: mobility, surprise, superiority. This is nothing new. This is something you need for all your military operations to ensure mobility. Show up where you need to show up very quickly and where you are not expected. Achieve surprise. If you are predictable by the enemy, you're done. Superiority. This is almost a conventional fight. You need a strength ratio of 1 to 3 to make sure to win. All right? So this is the strategy, the operational level factor of success. Terrain, Tombouctou and Gao. Remember those two towns on the Niger River? Once you secure that area, you've got a free access to the north of the country. Then you concentrate on the enemy, and you strike the enemy. And then you go to the last phase, and you focus on your partners. This is the same, shown on a map. Tombouctou, Gao, and the Niger River, just right there. Phase 1 sees Timbuktu and Gao, and then you go to the east and to the north. Here, and then to the north, and around this area between Tessalit and Kidal, which is a mountainous area, which is considered as a safe haven for rebels. And still today, this is the main area for our operations. The rest of the country is more or less secure. The rest of the country is more or less controlled by local forces, and the French focus on that area. Quick tempo, 10 weeks. 10 weeks to achieve that. Military operations have started on January the 14th. Here, April, we are addressing the threat of the Mujao, which is a cross-border organization in the eastern part of the country. How to do that? The French African experience has been critical. We've got several defense and cooperation agreements around Africa with different countries, meaning that we've got pre-deployed troops across the continent. And we rely on those troops as the core element for our operations in Africa. So it's not only about deploying troops from France, but it's also deploying troops from Ivory Coast, from Chad, from Niger. We have a permanent mission, which is a Navy mission, which is the equivalent of what you do with your MEU in the Marine Corps. The Navy has a ship permanently deployed alongside the western coast of Africa. And depending on the situation, they shift from a frigate to, I don't know what, to an amphibious assault ship. And still, depending on the situation, on board, you may have light troops, mechanized troops, or motorized troops. I've done that mission in 2000. At that time, the main focus was Ivory Coast, and finally, we intervened somewhere here in Guinea. It's a joint and it's a combined operation. Joint with the Navy, joint with the Air Force. It's a combined operation. We have deployed pretty much all what we have in terms of capabilities. Light tanks, aviation, infantry, airborne troops, mechanized and motorized infantry. And of course, we have set up a full support element dealing with the two main accesses from here, Abidjan, and Dakar in Senegal. So that's the beginning of the operation. That's Operation SURVAL. On the 1st of August 2014, we shifted from SURVAL to Barkhane. Why? This is the area of operation of Barkhane operation. Instead of only focusing on Mali, we have set up an area of operation made of 5 different countries. Mauritania, Mali, of course, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Chad. Why? As I told you, this is a transition area. It's true for Mali, it's also true for Mauritania, Niger, and Chad. Okay, the desert, the Sahara Desert, comes up to that lane, basically. And the rebels, they don't care about borders. So they move across all those countries. But if you're a soldier of the Malian army, you don't cross the borders. So when you chase the bad guys, when the bad guys enter Niger, you're obliged to stop. So what the French did is signing agreement with those 5 countries to allow French troops to cross the border without being obliged to engage negotiations and discussions with local authorities. And then we move our troops across this area depending on the local situation. And today, the main focus has moved to here, Madama, because this is the main access for the rebels coming from Libya in transition to Mali and Mauritania. And Operation Barkhane is a way to address that transnational threat across this area. And N'Djamena, which is the capital city of Chad, is the location of the command post of the operation. That operation has been designed to achieve that. Regional cooperation, so to push those countries, those partners, to cooperate together because they face the same enemy, they face the same threat, and to be unpredictable by the enemy. What can we say about the lesson learned? This is what I call reasons for success, or factors of success. And for most of them, every time, which are very tied, you've got strategic, operational, and tactical factors. Decision, short-loop decision. It is true at the political level. As for the US, the French president is the commander-in-chief. But the French president has a direct authority on the army and the rest of the armed forces. And he can commit whatever military element wherever he wants, whenever he wants in the world. He doesn't have to get the approval from the Congress. So the president has decided on the 13th of January to engage the enemy here and to commit troops. 2 days later, we had the 1st Battalion deployed over there. Short decision loop. It is true at the operational level. The local commander in N'Djamena does what he wants to do when he wants to do. And short decision loop because of what? Because of mission command. Most of our leaders over there have just the commander's intent. What does the commander want to achieve in the field? And based on that, they make their own decisions. That war is a war of lieutenants. It's a war of captains. And to a certain extent, a war of battalion commanders. So if tomorrow you go to France, if you visit an infantry battalion, you will have a huge battalion, 5 rifle companies, a combat support company, an HSC company, a training company, huge battalion, nearly between 11 and 1,200 soldiers. All right, but this is not a combat tool. The combat tool is there. An infantry battalion with additional capabilities brought from the outside to turn that battalion, that infantry battalion, into a combined arms maneuver battalion. That's part of the expeditionary spirit. Meaning when you got a battalion with 2 units deployed in Chad, you just need to give him an additional company from the QAF, and you've got your combat tool with 3 companies. But one more time, we need very smart captains. Captains that are able to integrate whatever structure they have to integrate. Captains that know that based on the commander's intent, they know they can do their business. What's the next war? Well, I have no crystal ball, so I have no idea what will be the next war, but I can tell you that Libya is going to be the main focus in the near future. Why? Because Libya, so this is a 2004 map. It has not changed since that. So Libya is still the weakest point in the area. Libya is still where all the smugglers, all the criminal networks they go through or they go from. And this is a main threat for Europe, so for France. Remember, Barkhane operation, Mauritania, Mali, Niger, Burkina, Chad here, and the main focus for them is Madama somewhere here. We've got today some ISIS elements showing up in the area. They come from here through Egypt and then Libya. And they've got the freedom of movement in Libya. This is the next war, folks. This is the next war. So what can I say? 2 things. You need partners and you need local partners. But your partners, you need to strengthen them. You need strong partners. Empower your partners. Don't do the job for them. Help them to do the job. And fight along with them. It's not only we've got capabilities they do not have. I've done 2 tours in Afghanistan. The last one was in 2012, 2013. What was the situation of the Afghan Army at that time? The main complaint of the defense minister was, I do not have enough capabilities. I want armed helicopters. I want UAVs. And more UAVs, more armed helicopters. But he has no money to maintain that. He cannot afford having that kind of capabilities. And at the same time, what we did, we as NATO, as Western powers, what we did is to train an Afghan army in a Western way. Having Afghan soldiers fighting like French or American soldiers, and then we spent our time wondering why are not they that efficient as we are, just because we do not address the same kind of soldiers. So instead of turning those soldiers into Western-like soldiers, we should have empowered those soldiers, empowered the Afghan leadership to conduct the type of war they used to conduct, and then fighting along with them to support them. But in that kind of operation, do not forget one point. Your agenda is not their agenda, and their agenda is not yours. Proxy war don't work. Proxy forces do not work. We've seen that in Iraq, we've seen that in Afghanistan, and it's a case today in Syria. Proxy war don't work. Thank you. If you got some question, I'm open to that. Yep.
All right, how you doing, sir? Captain Gooch. I have a question for you with regard to the fluid battlefield throughout the 5 countries that you explained. And the company's only armed with commander's intent. How do French commanders develop a common operating picture amongst their subordinates at the tactical level?
Well, there is none. Okay. We do not have the solution. You do not have the solution. The problem is distance. So when we train on very little areas. So all those mission command systems work very well. But as soon as you deploy in the real world, you're done. So what we think is we keep the minimum we need to conduct the fight. That's my mind, but don't rely on your mission command system to have the feeling that you know everything. We have something in the good old way when I was a cadet 25 years ago. We used to draw a line on our map. That line was a forward line of own troops. Now, with all those computers, et cetera, we came to the idea that, hey, you know what, I just look at the screen and I've got, I see my friends here, my other friends here, blah, blah, blah. I know where all those guys are. I'm a division commander, and I know that the team leader of that squad, of that platoon, of that company, of that battalion, blah, 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 is just located right there. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. So what you just need to know is, where is this forward line of own troops? Common operating picture is a nightmare. And I don't think we may have an answer. So what we need to do is to rely on basic information. Okay? If you got the same enemy targeted by 2 different friendly force or friendly elements, you will have 2 different locations, 2 different behaviors, etc., etc. Okay? So there's nothing magical in that. Don't expect having your the information coming from the computer. So first, make sure you know where are your guys and focus on your level. When you're a division commander, what makes sense for you is the position of the brigade and the battalions. When you're a battalion commander, what makes sense for you is the location of companies and the platoons. When you're a company commander, what makes sense for you is the location of your platoons and the squads. All right? For those who have been deployed in Afghanistan, the problem was it's a very, very low intensity operation. So every time you've got a gunfight somewhere, Okay, you've got the full chain of command, which is aware of it. So you've got a major lieutenant general who's in whatever headquarters in Kabul, and he wants to know everything about it. And actually, it involves one or two rebels, a squad, and that's it. So I think we need to redefine what we call a common operating picture, because we have a tendency to go too deeply in details, and then we forget the big picture. We forget the big picture. What a captain what a captain does in his own area matters for his CO, to a certain extent to his brigade commander. At a divisional level, it is not relevant. So I think we came with all those mission command systems with the idea that we're going to be able to know everything about everything, and it's not true.
Sir, Captain Farron, you talked a little bit about how Islamic State is in Libya. With them both having forces in Libya as well as Nigeria now with Boko Haram joining them, has that affected your guys' current mission? I know how you talked how that's probably going to be the next war, but how is that existing your fight there right now? And has that changed your end state at all?
It has. And now we are in discussions with Nigeria, because Nigeria is in the south of the area, and Nigeria is in trouble with other Islamist groups. The enemy changed. The enemy has new capabilities. So, and one more time, the first reason we came from SURVAL to Barkhane is to address a changing threat. Okay. In 2013, it was a purely local issue. It was a purely Malian issue. And it appeared to be very quickly a regional issue. And this is not really new, okay? In Afghanistan, we knew that the solution could be found not only in Afghanistan, but also in Iran and in Pakistan, okay? So it's not new. This is what we came to Barkhane to address a changing threat. The enemy is different. The TTPs are not that different. The rest, when you've got Ansardine, Mujao, etc., paying allegiance to the Islamic State, well, I mean, that's fashionable. It gives them a reason, to exist. It's much better to say, hey, I pledge allegiance to the caliphate, rather than being, hey, I'm just a fucking smuggler, and I make money because that's my end, all right? It gives you a higher standard, all right? So it changed the problem, yes. But this is why we came to Barkhane, the construct of Barkhane, which is to address a changing threat on a cross-border threat, which was not possible before that.
Sir, and I'm not as familiar with French capabilities as I probably ought to be, but I do remember that NATO supports many European missions in the Balkans, and that during our joint actions against Libya, after the first 2 to 6 weeks, there was a flexing of U.S. sustainment capabilities to some of our partners. Have you had trouble sustaining operations across 5 countries using French assets, and do you feel that your troops operate with more logistical sacrifices than some of us might be used to making?
Yeah. You don't miss what you don't have. All right? You don't miss what you don't have. In 1999, I was already deployed in Kosovo, and I was looking at the American troops preparing the winter with houses coming on trucks, whereas we were still on the tents. All right? So, yeah. But you've got houses, we have tents. You don't miss what you don't have. Logistics is and will remain a critical point of any kind of operations. I'm not a logistician, so I have no idea how to fix that. Yes, we've got issues. And like for the command operating picture, like for the mission command system, you need to come to the essential. So troops in Barkhane, they've got water, they've got food, they got ammunition, and they got fuel. Once you've got that, you can figure out how to work. Expeditionary spirit also means forget everything about FOBs and COBs. Back to the old tricks. Make a cycle with your combat vehicles, put your tents in the middle of the cycle, and organize a security system all around your element. Don't rely on COBs. Your logistics is much more efficient than ours, but you still got some issues. All right? So, one more time, back to the essential, back to the basics. Food, water, munition, fuel. Once you've got that, all right, you can work. And there is no other answer to that. Logistics is a nightmare. And thanks God, I'm not a logistician, so I'm not responsible for that, and that's very good for me. Okay, I'm just a guy who criticizes logisticians every day, and I'm in a much better position than they are. But yeah, it's a challenge. Every time, it's a challenge. Mali is a landlocked country, apart from Mauritania, which has an oceanic coast. The rest of the countries, Burkina Faso, Niger, Chad, and Mali, are landlocked countries. So what do you need? Airlift. When you want to achieve a surprise on the enemy, what do you need? Airlift. Helicopters, airborne troops. That's the way it works. But if you deploy aviation assets, you need to deploy a logistic with that. Is there some aviators here? No? Yep, you want? When you operate one helicopter, you need a full environment. And that environment is pretty much the same that if you operate 10 helicopters. All right? You need maintenance, you need fuel, you need weather teams, you need whatever airfield maintenance or airfield management teams, etc., etc. Okay? And as soon as you deploy one helicopter, you need all that. Once you've got it, you may deploy 20 other helicopters, and that core element won't increase a lot, actually. All right? So logistics is going to be the critical point. And one more time, I don't think there is any solution to that. But with that being said, when you know it, you're not surprised. I mean, I'm not surprised by the French logistics. When I'm said, you don't have it, say, hey, not surprised, man. I know. All right, so you don't miss what you don't have. So meaning that in your training, you need to train your soldiers to live in the fields with nothing. This is not a FOB mentality. This is an expeditionary mentality. Okay? Okay. Thank you very much.